Hello, my name is Henry Brzycki and I am president of the Brzycki Group. We are a human development and learning organization based in State College, Pennsylvania. And today I'm going to talk to you about my new book. The title of the book is The Self in Schooling, Theory and Practice: How to Create Happy, Healthy, Flourishing Children in the 21st Century. This book is based upon my over 30 years of experiences in counseling adolescents and teaching adolescents in a classroom setting. And it really occurred to me through my clinical practice that today's youth are hurting. And it compelled me, from a sense of higher purpose and mission in my life, to try and do something about the condition of well-being of our youth in today's society. So therefore, I embarked on a long-term research study to investigate the causes and some possible solutions to the well-being issues in our society today. Because of the myriad of problems and conditions in today's modern society that we do not yet have a mindset or ways of thinking in which to solve, I came up with a model of the mind with which to help researchers study and impact child well-being and the ability to learn socio-emotionally about themselves and to be able to have really at their beck and call a handbook for a positive life course. The book provides extensive well-being research. It has a complete theoretical background for researchers to use, for clinical practitioners to use, and classroom teachers to use, as well as medical professionals. In the second half of the book, we provide examples of actual methods or interventions that can be used in a classroom setting. Families can use them at home. Counselors can use them in their counseling practice, or medical professionals can use it in their medical education and treatment of patients. Most books, well-researched books, scholarly books, separate out well-being research from education research. One of the unique qualities of this book, and really the emphasis of my work over the last 30 years, is at the crossroads of education and psychology. And we have come up with a way to combine the two in practice, to operationalize it in our school systems, as well as to be able to take this to the policy level. The implications, we feel, are dramatic and huge. We hope to impact the dire condition of children in today's society. Let me give you a few examples of the research. Here is one that is probably the most outstanding. Dr. Jean Twenge at San Diego State University, in her most recent study, found that 5 times as many high school and college students are dealing with anxiety and other mental health issues as did youth during the Great Depression era. We feel that's significant metric to give us a clear indication that things are worse in today's society than they were even during the Great Depression in terms of well-being. Let me give you some additional statistics to support the need for this work from a theoretical standpoint and from a practitioner standpoint. The rate of antidepressant use in the United States has increased nearly 400% over the last 2 decades. Significant increase. As of today, 70% of Americans are taking some sort of prescription drugs. 60% of our children are overweight. 30% approximately are obese. Think of the long-term implications on the quality of their lives of those statistics. not to mention the economic cost to our society. Further, since 1980, the percentage of children who are overweight has more than doubled, with the rate in adolescence more than tripling. Now, why is that significant for this research and the thesis of this book? The thesis is that modern education is not serving the needs of our society and our children, and in fact is harming our children. The focus, the concentration on standards-based education, which had its founding in 1980 with a document known as A Nation at Risk. Since then, we have been inundated with more and more standards, and the teaching and counseling practices have been geared toward imparting those academic standards. The cost being the health and well-being of our children. This is why we feel this work is significant in this book. We need a model of the mind with which to research, study, and develop approaches and interventions and curricula to positively impact the minds of people in modernity, or what I like to call a 21st century mind. What is the best way to impart the 21st century mind? It is through schooling and schooling best practices. Now, some would say, is that the purpose of education? To impart psychological well-being to our young people? We assert that education has always been used to advance society's values and goals. Let's look at today's Common Core standards, which are intended to get young people college and career ready. There is an agenda there, a national agenda to empower our students to be college and career ready. Back in the late 50s and early 60s, during the Sputnik era, our ideology caused us to say we are going to beat the Russians in our race to space. So there was a big push on science and engineering. Again, a national agenda. We feel, and the research really bears this out, that today's educational paradigm calls for us to focus first on the emotional, psychological, and physical well-being of children to advance our society's modern values. In fact, President Obama in 2013 challenged neuroscientists and researchers to come up with ways to treat, prevent, and cure injury and disease by mapping the mind. I will be discussing a model of the mind called the I-Self model, or the integrated self model. It is intended to map neurologically pathways to prevent and to treat and to cure injury and disease in modern society. Is that possible? Is there such a model that exists that can prevent injury and disease and treat people at their most fundamental neurological levels? Yes, the integrated self model is that model that will help researchers and practitioners revolutionize our understanding of people and uncover new ways to treat, prevent, and cure injury and disease. Let me provide an example of how we can literally change the neurological pathways of the minds of children. From Dr. Dean Ornish's work, which has been well researched and publicized, he found that changing lifestyles changes type 2 diabetes and symptoms of type 2 diabetes. So in effect, turning on hundreds of good genes within just 3 months of changing their lifestyles and turning off the bad genes that promote disease. Well, the I-Self model gives us a way to be able to help children literally change their genetic construct so that they can live a healthier, happier, more flourishing life. And the research that we presented in the book draws upon the work of academic researchers, mind, brain, and education researchers, medical research. We looked at the causal relationship between learning about emotions, which is an integrated self-model distinction, and the impact on the prefrontal cortex and the insular cortex. Our work draws upon researchers Mary Helen and Mordino Yang and Antonio Damasio. They have come up with an interesting idea that we like to incorporate into the integrated self model called emotional thought. And emotional thought is essential for a new 21st century mind because it promotes intrinsic understanding of self and the need to want to go and learn at higher and higher levels. Not just in a schooling setting, but in life. So the idea is to first teach children that there is a self, and the model or the construct of that self is what we're calling the integrated self, which combines mind, body, and soul. But it also draws upon a person's positive psychology attributions, such as purpose in life. If you believe that everyone has a purpose in life, and that is important to teach children, it is an automatic motivation for children to want to learn because it will help them understand themselves as their purpose in life and be able to put themselves on a pathway to manifesting that purpose. We feel that's a worthwhile attribution to teach children in a schooling setting. And we have found, and there's a wide body of research that supports the causal relationship between this one I-self distinction, purpose in life, and positive academic achievement and increased measures of health and well-being. The National Institute of Health sponsored a study at Carnegie Mellon where they looked at simply, are people who are happier less likely to catch a cold? And they found significant causal relationships between the two. So the research is wide and deep on the causal relationships between different attributions of the self or the self as a whole and our ability to control our own health and well-being. I'd like to also talk about the integrated self model, not only in terms of emotional, psychological, and physical well-being, but I'd also like to talk about it in terms of academic achievement. If you look at the critical statistics in our education system in terms of outcomes, those are as critical and as dire as the psychological metrics that we're looking at. Here are some examples from recent studies. 2 out of 3 8th graders can't read proficiently in the United States. Nearly 2/3 of 8th graders scored below proficient in math. 75% of students are not proficient in civics. Nearly 3 out of 4 8th and 12th grade students cannot write proficiently. Just take those statistics from academic outcomes. Given the huge investments we've made into standards-based education in modern society, we're not getting the results. We're not getting the return on that investment. And yet, when I talk to superintendents, when I talk to the U.S. Department of Education policymakers, they've got so much money committed and invested into this present paradigm, they don't want to change it. They want to keep on doing what they're doing in order or until hoping to get a return on that investment. we're saying enough is enough. And it's time to create a new paradigm, one that focuses on the student, creating a person-centered or student-centered educational paradigm that addresses both the psychological well-being of students as well as their ability to achieve at higher and higher academic standards based upon their own sense of potential. And that is the thesis of this book, that we hope to create a paradigm shift, a Copernican type paradigm shift, where we go from the standards being the center of our educational paradigm to students themselves and their psychological and academic achievement being the center of the educational paradigm going forward. We feel the benefits to the students will be profound as well as to our society. We can create a society that we can envision using the I-Self model and operationalizing that in our education system through something we call the self across the curriculum. The self across the curriculum is a technique, a curriculum and instruction technique that teachers can use today, and it has been used successfully in numerous occasions, to impart the integrated self model attributions through any subject that teachers are teaching. It is a wonderful technology, and I give examples in the second half of the book of teachers that are using it nationwide with wonderful results. I've also been able to present at the American Educational Research Association some of the findings of these studies as well. So the book is filled with research, substantive research, to be able to satisfy any curiosity you have in researching emotional and psychological metrics or academic outcomes. And we can together improve both.